Boa Hancock is a bitch. I hate her. She kicks kittens and baby seals. She's an animal abuser. How can anyone do that? Boa may be gorgeous, but she's just a Luffy simp, which ruins her character. These assertions about Boa Hancock unsettle my spirit to its very core. Yes, while we don't condone animal cruelty, unless spiders are involved, people seem to use that specific trait about Boa to dismiss her character as a whole and omit her from the waifu debate. The problem with this agenda is that completely judging a character like Boa without the proper context and understanding of her backstory will lead to an ignorant view of the Pirate Empress. The ancient proverb of don't judge a book by its cover rings true in this situation, which means it's my job to take you past the cover of Boa Hancock and introduce you to the book of one of the best female characters One Piece has to offer. I'd also like to introduce you to this little red device called the subscribe button, where you can get your consistent shipment of One Piece contraband at your leisure. While I don't agree with the surface level perception of Boa Hancock, I think it's important to lay out all the characteristics of Boa that we're presented with on the surface. The island of Amazon Lily, described as a nation where strength is beauty, where women provide for themselves and each other, where women are raised from birth to be fierce warriors, have a clear culture that defines the general attributes of all of its inhabitants. As the leader of such an island, it's not surprising that Boa would be the greatest displayer of these attributes. This initial insight is further stated by Margaret, who describes how the people of Kuja view the Snake Princess. But we the readers understand that might not be the case. Ironically, the first action we see from Hancock is her kicking a kitten that was in the path towards confronting Vice Admiral Momonga. Now I understand that might be a very bad start for her character, I get it, but that was only the beginning. Hancock comes off as unreasonable, prideful to an extreme, and yet so damn beautiful. Her beauty was nearly as effective as Conqueror's Haki if you think about it. And while one may think they can resist Boa easily because they don't like her, if you met her in person, I doubt you stand a chance. I mean, imagine a prime Beyonce and a prime Jessica Alba with revealing clothing and snakes wrapped around their bodies standing before you. Do you think you'd stand a chance? I just don't think you'd be able to do it. The fact that Momonga needed to inflict pain upon himself in order to resist her wiles was proof of her overwhelming beauty. Considering the fact that Momonga is also one of the most serious characters that we've run into at this point, it's pretty damning. With the goddess complex established, with her refusal of the world government's summons and crippling of Momonga's forces, we learned of the stubborn, prideful, deceitful nature that Hancock displayed on the surface. Now, as we enter the island of Amazon Lily, we're exposed to more of this initial perception, as Hancock is greeted with a thoughtful sculpture of her, made by the children of Kuja out of admiration for her. How does she respond? Yeah, she breaks it because it's made out of mud, which she deems as an insult. All of these negative traits are implied further with her interactions with Granny Neon, formerly known as Gloriosa, the former empress of Amazon Lily. Granny Neon begs Hancock to reconsider her denial of the world government, as it would jeopardize the entirety of the Kuja kingdom, in which Hancock responds by manipulating her and her servants with a deceptive yet cute gesture, which was also followed by Boa tossing her out of a building with her bare hands. Yikes. At this point, Boa has kicked a kitten, disregarded the orders of the world government, which would compromise her entire kingdom due to her own pride and hatred of the world government, disrespect the love and admiration of the children of Kuja, and tossed the woman who has watched over her for years out the window for making a very valid and reasonable request. Yeah, the cover to this book is not looking too hot right now, it's really not. Now here is where we start to open up the book of Boa Hancock. The arrival of Monkey D. Luffy and the exposure of her tragic backstory. The revelation of a mark that absolutely no one must see draws the reader into a curious state. There's more to Boa than we initially knew, and to top it all off, Luffy of all people is the one to see it. This is where Boa's walls start to break. Luffy broke the barrier of Boa's shame by seeing the mark on her back, which is later revealed to be the mark of the Celestial Dragons. Luffy had no impure thoughts about seeing Hancock naked in her bath, which broke the barrier of Boa's pride. Luffy was a man outside the comprehension of Boa, and she could not stand for it. We fast forward to Luffy's capture, where he's exposed to her nasty nature, with the punishment of Margaret and her friends for the rescue for Luffy. The women of Kuja enable the Empress with their praise and justification while Luffy condemns Boa in the middle of her haughty gesture. Another strike to Boa's pride and social assertion. Luffy's incredibly selfless gestures towards Sandersonia with the hiding of her Tenryubito mark, and the choosing of the life of Margaret and her friends over his true desire, which was meeting his crew, was the final blow to Hancock's emotional defenses, which led to the turning point of her character. The book is finally open. Hancock reveals the mark of the Celestial Dragons to Luffy, which begins the painful backstory of her and her sisters. Now, if you've been following along to this point, we've established the cold, tough, prideful, and stubborn nature of Boa. So for someone like her to expose her body and the ultimate shame of her life to Luffy is a monumental moment that should not be underestimated. People don't understand the gravity of what the Boa sisters went through in slavery. At the young age of 12, Boa, a woman known for her beauty, had to suffer any and all sorts of unimaginable torture, abuse, physical and mental, and humiliation on a daily basis. For 4 years. In fact, her first exposure to a man was stated to leave an undying fear within her. The very mention of these memories led Sandersonia to break into an uncontrollable cry of pain. I'm honestly getting queasy just thinking about it. You add to the fact that no one in the world can legally stand against these tyrants, and you understand that this is an endless trial of pain and suffering. It is quite literally hell on earth. The description of being a slave for the world nobles only serves the purpose to amplify the greatness of Fisher Tiger, the fisherman who rescued the Boa sisters and thousands of other slaves from that hell on earth. The importance of highlighting this tragedy helps define and add context to her character. Why is Boa such a cruel, disdainful, and deceitful person on the outside? This panel from chapter 521 answers it all. Even if it means deceiving my people, I have to continue the pretense. I don't want anyone to control me ever again. I'm afraid of being vulnerable, and I always will be. These few lines of dialogue explain everything about Boa Hancock. In the world of men, the world that enslaved her, she donned the face of absolute beauty, complete defiance for any and all who stood before her, the aura of the untouchable, the pose of looking down on everyone within her presence, and it was all to fight against the immense trauma of her enslavement. The very fact that she joined hands with the world government for the sake of the safety of her people proves that she cares for them. For anyone who knows victims of abuse or may have been a victim themselves, the way Boa Hancock has fought against this trauma is a testament to her character and will. She is truly an empress. And listen, I understand this doesn't mean it's okay for her to do these terrible things, but understanding the context behind it is very, very important for her character. Remember the importance of Monkey D. Luffy? Is it a surprise that the actions of Luffy struck a chord with the Empress? The man who punched the Celestial Dragon for the sake of a single friend? The man who broke down every single defense mechanism she'd adopted from her slavery? The first literal man she's ever become vulnerable in front of? This is the same woman who refused to be vulnerable to anyone in the world barring her sisters, let alone a man who she has an undying fear of. Luffy saw past her shame and condemned the entity responsible for her trauma. He saved the perception of her and her sisters. He doesn't see her as an object of beauty like she would expect everyone else she's come in contact with to see. Luffy is literally a myth to her, the ideal being, the love of her life. Luffy is the one who allowed Boa to be herself. Luffy makes Boa feel safe and vulnerable. Luffy doesn't see her as anything to attain, enslave, or worship, and that is something Boa hasn't felt in a very, very long time. To underestimate Boa's attraction to Luffy is to underestimate her character and her backstory and her life in general. The story of Boa Hancock, the development of her character, and the change in which Luffy brought about is nothing short of masterful writing from Oda. And it's time the community puts respect on her name. It's time the community stops degrading Boa Hancock without proper context. We haven't even gotten to her strength feats or her lore yet, but I'll save that for another video. Boa Hancock may be a bitch, but she's my favorite bitch in the series and I wouldn't trade her for anyone else in the world. Okay, maybe except for Robin. Take care.